it's probably worth it. If you're at Harvard and building up great stature for when you graduate, I'm not saying building up a great education. There's a lot of problems in Cambridge. But I need people who are at Harvard or thinking about attending Harvard to recognize they're at a place with a notably racist admissions policy. I mean, that's what came out of the trial. It's stuff that we pretty much know, but here it is in print from a fairly seasoned judge, Allison Burroughs, with reams of findings that don't deny it. Race-based admissions at Harvard. They have a justification, that is diversity. Whether that's a good justification is for students, I think, at Harvard and alums to really assess. They're at a minimum a place with some prominent racists, and they're influential racists. That's the faculty members who abide by and often structure admission policies to admit based somewhat on national origin and race. The result? They make it harder for Asian Americans to gain admission to their university. Now, this isn't a vicious racism like the Jim Crow South with hosings and beatings and occasionally lynchings, but it has a pernicious result. And it has a horrible grounding that your blood matters. That's not an American result. Now, conservatives have known this for a long time. I'd like to speak to progressives, maybe to unwoke you, that just as, or almost as, your predecessors in the 60s and 70s were so animated by racial injustices, you here deserve to be animated by continued racial injustice. The students now, clearly they haven't suffered lynchings or forced segregation on buses. Okay, so it is a lower level when you're getting into your fourth choice college instead of your first. But it is an injustice worth fighting. Look, the students today attending Harvard University, they've suffered no injuries from Southern sheriffs in a Jim Crow regime. You can only be just in your own time. When you're looking back 1 or 2 generations to try to balance things out, you're not being just in your own time. The student who's worked hard despite adversity probably does deserve a lift. That is a meritorious thing compared to the privileged kid. I believe in elevating that first student, but I'm not elevating based on race. Remember, you can only be just in your own time. And we have very little racial discrimination now. Indeed, you can't really tell whether a underprivileged minority might it be the child of somebody who was quite privileged, parents who might have advanced in academia or in corporations based on diversity ensuring policies. And in the 1960s and 70s, that affirmative action, I think, had a place. But now, the kids or grandkids of those who've benefited, it's a big mix-up. Harvard itself still clings to hiring based on race. That's why they bring in one Elizabeth Warren from Midwest, obscure professorship to a tenure-track law school position based in part on race. Why? They touted it. We are the first employer of an Indian American. Would Elizabeth Warren, leading light of the Democrat Party, have gotten to Harvard without the racial lineage? Would Barack Obama have gotten to Harvard without the racial lineage? When colleges are animated by race, they are respecting things that are out of the control of kids or parents. Parents often try to do better for their kids and get hurt by it. They move out of a not-so-good urban zip code to a suburban area for better education, And with this kind of admission policy, their kids get punished by it. I have students in this very classroom on weekends who work really hard, of all races, to better themselves. How does it feel to work your tail off and see your admissions chances diminished because somebody in another zip code, a less privileged one who doesn't work very hard, is getting a lift above you? I have a solution. All right, the solution, 3 parts for measuring a student's merit. Number 1, SAT scores. Number 2, faculty recommendations. And number 3, peer recommendations. You can do this. Peer recommendations, the 30 or so students that you know decently, ranked campus after campus, you're going to be able to discern students who are kind, students who are leaders, students who are brilliant in certain ways, students who are diligent in certain ways, students who might be underprivileged and move up despite those privileges. Peers can tell you an awful lot, and they'll do it a lot more fairly than demographics. I'm Mark Stewart.